of materials used in this project, check out the description below and click on Show More. There's some other good stuff down there, so you'll want to make sure you check it out. Before we begin our project, we're going to gather a few different materials. I have some links here, and these are the acrylic links. They're very lightweight, and when you get them, they're going to have a thin plastic coating on them that protects them when they're being made because they are laser cut. So we have that coating on there that protects them. And all you have to do is take your needle here and just kind of scrape up the edge. The plastic will come right off, and you can just discard that. So I've already taken that layer off of here. You can see they're really nice and shiny, and they don't get scratched because of that coating that's on there. So when they're in the bag together, or if you have them in your storage with some other items, keeping that coating on is going to be nice until you actually have to use them, because it'll protect that surface there, and you can see nice and shiny, no marks or abrasions on that. I've got two different ones that I'm using here. I have this open one, and then I also have this solid one. Solid one is same size as the center of this, so it looks really nice together, and I love this tortoiseshell color. Also using some 11-0 seed beads. You can of course use whatever color you want. I'm using a neutral champagne color, and that looks nice with my 6mm gemstones here. The gemstones are just a variety of stones. I actually have a multi-pack of stones. So in that multi-pack, you're going to get a variety. You're going to get rose quartz, some picture jasper, tiger's eye, serpentine jade. You'll get some aventurine, some different jaspers and agates. Each pack is different. So if you get multiple packs, you'll never get two the same. It's just a nice variety of natural stones. So I've grabbed that because I want something, I want this to be kind of eclectic. So you can see here I've got different stones as my links here for each section here. So again, you just need those 6mm rounds, some seed beads, and 11-0, whatever color you want, and then a link of your choice. Again, I'm using this acrylic in this tortoiseshell for a very classic look. So go ahead and gather your materials and we'll get started. Oh, and of course you need a needle and thread. I'm using a black thread here just so that it's easy for you to see in the video, but you're going to want to pick a thread for a thread that will blend in with whatever seed beads you're using. That's where you're going to see that thread. And if I turn this to the side here, you'll see you can see that black thread there. So that'll give you an idea of what color you want to match your thread with. And a size 10 needle will be fine for this. Okay, let's go ahead and gather our materials, then we'll get started. So now I'm ready to begin making my necklace. The first step that I'm going to do is making the link here with my gemstone and seed beads, and then I'll connect that link to the pre-made links on each side. So to start this link, I'm going to pick up one of my seed beads and let that fall to the end. I'm going to leave a little bit of a thread tail there, just a few inches, and take my needle and thread back through that seed bead. So my thread wraps around it. You can see that thread on the outside of the seed bead, and that'll just hold my thread so that my thread doesn't pull out as I work. That'll just be my stop bead. I'm going to pick up 2 more seed beads and then go through my 6mm gemstone round. I need 3 more seed beads, and then I'm going to pass back through the round. So as I pass back through the round and I pull, the 3 seed beads that we just added should be sitting in a little triangle on top of that gemstone, centered over the hole. So now on this other side, I'm going to pass back through these 3 11-0 seed beads, starting with that stop bead, and then pass through those 3 11-0s and back through the gemstone. And as I pull, I want to pull my thread and the seed beads here so that they also sit in a perfect little triangle on the other side of my bead, right above the hole. I'm going to pass through the other 3 seed beads here on this other side. So pass through all 3 beads in that triangle. And just give your thread a nice little pull to make sure everything is tight. I'm going to pick up now 6 seed beads. And I'm going to go through the triangle on the opposite side. I'm going to go through the first bead of that triangle. And I'm actually going to skip the center bead of the triangle and then just go through the 3rd bead. So I'm going through the 2 beads on the end. And as I do that, it'll push that center bead up and it'll tighten, and it'll just tighten everything up so that this border of seed beads that I'm adding around the bead will sit closer to the bead and I won't have gaps in my thread. So now I'm going to pick up 6 more seed beads. And on this other side, again, I'm going to go through the first bead in the triangle, skip over that center, and go through the 3rd bead in the triangle. And so you want your thread to be sitting between those 2 beads and sitting under that center bead. And give it a little pull just to make sure that you don't have any gaps in your thread. And now we're ready to start building this sort of halo effect around the gemstone. So now my thread is coming out of that 3rd bead in that triangle. So I'm coming out of the 11-0 that's sitting next to the 11-0 in the center of my triangle. And I'm going to pick up 3 seed beads. I'm going to go back around that 11-0, the one where my thread is coming out, and I'm going to pass through that bead and the bead next to it. And again, just give it a pull. So you want to always give a nice little pull and pull your thread tail too periodically just to make sure that you're kind of pulling from both directions and cinching everything from both directions there. So I've gone through, I've picked up 3 beads and I've gone through the bead that my thread was coming out of, and I've passed also through the next bead. Pick up 2 seed beads, and we're going to pass down through the 3rd seed bead in that set of 3. So the bead that's sitting directly on top of, it's kind of sitting on top of the 2 beads that I just passed through. I'm going to go down through that bead, the bead that my thread is coming out of, and the next bead. 2 more beads, and then down through that bead next to where I'm working here, that 3rd bead in that set of 3 that I picked up, the bead that my thread is coming out of, and the next bead. And I'm going to continue this all the way until I get to the bead here in my set of 3 in my triangle, the first bead in my triangle. So I'm going to continue here for another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beads, and that will bring me to that first bead in the triangle. And then I'll continue on and work on the other side. I've just passed through that first bead in my triangle, and now instead of going through the center bead, I'm going to go through the 3rd bead in that triangle. So again, I'm skipping the center bead and moving from the first to the 3rd seed bead in that little triangle above the bead's hole, the 6 millimeter bead's hole. And now I'm ready to start the second side here. I'm going to do it just like I did the first side, picking up 3 beads to start out, going back through that bead, the same 11-0 that I'm coming out of, and I'm going to also go through the bead right next to it. And now I can start with picking up just 2 beads and going through the third bead in the group of 3, the bead that my thread is coming out of, and the bead next to it. So down through that bead, the bead that my thread is coming out of, and the bead next to it. And I'm going to continue here, picking up 2 and continuing this halo until I get back to kind of where I started here. And I'm going to stop when when my thread is passing through and I've added that set of 3 beads above that first bead in my triangle on the other side here. I finished the halo section, the little halo of seed beads around my gemstone, and my thread is coming out of that first bead in the triangle that sits right above the hole in my gemstone. I'm going to take my needle and thread and go through that center bead, so just the next bead there, and that's the center bead of the triangle. And I'm also going to go through the first bead in the little halo, or the set of 3 that I added to above the next bead. So I'm going through the center bead, and then I'm going through the next bead, working away from the gemstone. I'm going to pick up 2 seed beads, and then I'm going to go down through the same bead on the other side. So just that first bead, or the closest bead in that little set of 3, or that halo over my 11-0. And I'm going to go back through the center bead of my triangle and follow my thread path here through the next bead and back through, or continue on through the 2 beads that I just added. So I've made a little triangle here with the 3 beads here that were already existing, and I've added 2 beads spanning across that gap that sits right above my center 11, or my center 11-0 in that triangle. So I've added 2 beads right there spanning that gap. This is going to be the beginning of my ladder stitch. And you can see here, this is now my ladder stitch connection here that I'll use to connect to my pre-made links. You can make this ladder stitch however long you want to make the entire necklace or bracelet, whatever you're going to do. You can change the length of this ladder stitch to make the necklace or bracelet smaller or shorter. I'm going to show you, in this piece here, I'm doing what I would suggest as the shortest that you want to make this link or this ladder stitch to connect comfortably with the links that I'm using. So I would do a minimum of the length that I'm going to show you here, but you can always make it longer. I'm going to use this ladder stitch here and add 3 more rows. So I went 4 rows total. Picking up 2 seed beads, I'm going to go back through the 2 beads that my thread's coming out of, and then back up through the 2 beads that I just added. I'm going to pick up 2 more seed beads and continue through the 2 beads that my thread's coming out of, and then back through the 2 beads that I just added. And remembering to pull your thread tight the entire way to reduce any of the looseness in your thread there. So need another set of 2 that I'm adding here. And so you can see here I've got now 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. So 4 pairs of seed beads that are just sitting right next to each other. I'm going to end this with a single bead. So I'm attaching it in the same way. I'm continuing that ladder stitch, but I'm picking up 1 bead instead of 2. So my ladder stitch ends with just 1 little bead here at the end. And I'm going to go through that bead again to just reinforce this, because this ladder stitch is going to be holding your project together. So I always like to reinforce and go through a couple times just for some extra security. And now I'm going to work my ladder stitch going down the other way, just kind of crossing back and forth through those beads, up and down, until I get to the first pair of seed beads in the ladder stitch. And as I do that, as I work my way back down, it will kind of correct any wonkiness or unevenness in your ladder stitch. Coming out of this first pair of seed beads in the ladder stitch, I'm going to pick up another 2 seed beads and go back through that bead. I'm going to create another row or another length of ladder stitch coming off of the same first 2 seed beads that I used for my first length of ladder stitch. So my ladder stitch is going to start with that first 2 set of seed beads, and I've got 1 row going this way, and I'm going to have another row coming off the other way. So 1 in the front and 1 in the back. So I'm just going to kind of tuck away that first arm of ladder stitch so it's not distracting. And I've added my second row here. I'm going to pick up 2 more seed beads and continue the ladder stitch. Three, so I need 1 more set here to make my 4th row. And now when I have 4 rows of ladder stitch, I'm going to pick up that 1 seed bead to add to the end and just reinforce that and go around that bead twice, and now back through that single bead at the end. And you can see here I've got a bail essentially, but it's not connected at the top. So I have the 2 seed beads that I started with, and then I built that ladder stitch off the front and the back, ending with that 1 seed bead. The next thing I need to do is attach it to my link. So I'm going to take my needle and thread here, and I'm going to go through the hole in my link. And then I'm going to pick up the 11/0 on the other side, on the other length of the ladder stitch, and I'm going to go back through the hole. So I'm just picking up the 11/0 on either side and connecting it to that hole. I'm going to go back through the 11/0 here on this front side and go through the hole in my link again, through the 11/0 on the other side, and through the hole in the link. So now I'm coming out on the side with the second piece of ladder stitch that I did. So I'm going to pass through the 11/0 again. And now I'm going to go back down through that ladder stitch. And as I go back down through this ladder stitch, it will also help to reinforce it and correct any sort of unevenness, just like I did with the first ladder stitch. So now once you've connected to your link here, we can move on to do the second side here. I'm going to take my needle and thread and just pass through the beads that already exist in my project here. And I'm going to follow my thread path and go around my gemstone. And I'm following all those beads next to my gemstone until I get to that triangle of seed beads on the other side of the stone. And I'm going to go through the center bead in that triangle and the bead directly next to it, working away from my gemstone. I'm going to pick up 2 seed beads, and then I'm going to go to the 11/0 opposite on the other side here, and through that center seed bead again, the center in the triangle, and back up through the seed bead next to it, and then through the set of 2 again. And this will get me back to where I started on the other side here to add the ladder stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and just follow the same directions and add a ladder stitch just like this one to this pair of seed beads here. And I'll then link to the next link that I need to connect to my project. So go ahead and get to this point, and then I will continue this, and I'll show you what mine looks like when I'm done with this step. You can see here that I've finished this link, and I've attached it to my open link here, and then I've also attached it to the closed link that I had already attached to the rest of my project. So you're going to continue here and just tie off your thread at this point. So I'm going to follow my thread path back through all my seed beads here until I get to where my tail thread is. And now your tail thread should be wrapped around one of your seed beads here. And you can unwrap it if you want. You can find that end and just pull that out. I'm not worried about it though, because I don't think it's that noticeable. So I'm now just going to tie my thread ends together in a square knot. And a square knot is just going to be your right over your left. And then if you want to switch here, you're just doing then your left over the right. And as I do that, I'm going to take my thread burner and just burn down that extra thread. And just being very careful not to actually burn any of the thread that you need to keep. You don't want to pull your project apart just yet. Hopefully you don't pull it apart at all. But you want to be careful just to make sure that you don't accidentally nick or cut any of those other pieces of thread that you don't want to cut, because that can be very easy to do. So here I've got my necklace most of the way done, and you can see I've got quite a few links on here. The length on this one, or for this length here, I've got 5 of each. So I have 5 of my open and 5 of my closed ovals, and I've just alternated them. Now what I'm going to do to finish this, to add the clasp, now if you make it long enough, you don't have to add a clasp. You can just continue on just like this, make it long enough to put it over your head. But if you do want to put a clasp on it, you can do what I'm about to do. I'm going to make 2 more links just like this with my gemstone. And one of the side of the links I'm going to connect, just like I did, to my last link. So my last link on each side is going to have one of these gemstone links attached. But then the way that I'm going to switch it up a little bit is on the opposite side of the gemstone link, instead of attaching to another acrylic link and needing to do 2 lengths of the ladder stitch, I'm just going to do 1 length of the ladder stitch and then connect to whatever clasp I'm going to use. So I'm going to get those links prepared, and then I'll show you what those look like. I'm using the same instructions. The only thing that I'm doing differently is on one side of my gemstone link, I'm only making 1 length of ladder stitch, not 2. So let me get those ready, and then I will show you what that looks like. I've now added one of my gemstone links to the very last acrylic link in my project. So on this gemstone link, I have the one side here attached with the little V, or the 2 rows of ladder stitch. And on the other side, because I'm going to add a clasp, I only need 1 row of ladder stitch. So I've just done 1, and I've ended with my 1 little seed bead there at the very end. I'm going to now add a couple wire guards. I'm going to add 1 wire guard to this side and 1 wire guard to the other side. So we'll do both sides exactly the same. Both ends of my project will be exactly the same. Coming out of that last 11-0, I'm going to pick up 1 11-0, and I'm going to go through one side of my wire guard. I'm going to take my thread and go down through the other side of the wire guard. And as I pull, I want to make sure that my thread sits in the trough of the wire guard. It's really easy to let that thread accidentally fall over the side, but you want to make sure that the thread is sitting inside that wire guard. I'm going to pick up another 11-0 and go through the 11-0 at the very end of my ladder stitch from the other side. So when I pull tight, I should have my 1 seed bead at the end of the ladder stitch, an 11-0, my wire guard, an 11-0, and then back through the 11-0 at the end of the ladder stitch. I'm going to pass through my 11-0 and the wire guard and the 11-0 on the other side. get my thread a little tangled here. I'm going to pass through these beads again, and I'm just following the same thread path. And all I'm doing here is just reinforcing it. I want to have two or three passes of thread through here, because this is where my connection is going to be to my clasp. So it's going to be handled a bunch as you take it on and off. So it's good just to reinforce it and have that extra thread running through there. So there's the one end. I'm going to just go back now through my ladder stitch and find the other end of my thread and tie that off. And that's all I'm doing. And that's all I'm doing here. Once I get through my thread, or sorry, through my ladder stitch, just passing through the project around the gemstone, going through these seed beads in that little circle that was surrounding them, that little border, until I get to the other side where my thread tail is. And once I get there, I'm just going to tie it off and burn it down. So you can see, very simple there. So now to attach whatever kind of clasp you want, you can use a pair of jump rings. You're going to need a couple of these flat nose pliers. I have actually some that have little grooves in them, and I also have some that are flat inside and smooth. You want to use something preferably that is smooth, just so that you don't get any kinks, or you don't like scratch at the surface of your metal. And all I'm going to do here with my jump ring is grip it on either side of that opening and twist it open. And I'm going to attach, I'm going to slip it onto my wire guard, and then I'm going to slip it onto my, I'm going to slip my lobster clasp onto my jump ring and just twist this closed. So I'm always twisting it open and closed, kind of like a slinky, and not pulling the ends apart from each other, but just simply twisting them. So there's the one end. I'm going to go ahead and complete the other end. And all I need on that other end is the jump ring that my lobster clasp will attach to. So this end here will have my jump ring and my lobster clasp. The other end is just going to have my jump ring. I'm going to go ahead and add that other end, and then I will be completely done with my necklace. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Please leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts on the project. If you're also interested in more tutorials just like this one, click on that subscribe button so that you're notified as soon as we have new videos available.